Companion is kind of an impossible movie to talk about if you want to keep it spoiler free, but then the trailer, not the teaser we saw a while ago, but the actual trailer, spoils a lot about the movie. I mean, you can pretty much put the whole thing together watching it. So here's how we're going to do this. I'm going to give a general vague review in the first half of this video. Then I'm going to talk about some things that are revealed in that trailer, so mild spoilers. And at the end, I'm going to give my final thoughts and a rating, as I always do. The timestamps are there for you to skip around if you need to, but let's talk about Companion. The movie is about Josh and his girlfriend Iris, played by Jack Quaid and Sophie Thatcher, and they go to a billionaire's house in a remote location. Of course it is. So Josh can introduce Iris to his friends, but it's not long until things go very wrong, and it turns out there is a lot more going on than meets the eye. I was actually pretty excited to see this film, even though it's a January release, but based on that teaser and Sophie Thatcher being involved, who we can confidently say is our newest Scream Queen, I was sold on very little information. It looked fun, it looked vibrant, it also looked like it was going to go to some dark places, and all of those things are true. Here's what I'll say. This is a good movie to go out and watch with your friends. It has a nice balance of humor and violence. It's not overly depressing or overly complicated. It's a fun popcorn comedy horror film with an interesting concept, and it's easy to enjoy it for what it is. It's not a movie that's particularly profound or particularly scary, but it does have an exciting premise. It's well paced, it has a lot of twists and turns, and its approach to its themes of toxic relationships and self-discovery does feel fresh. At the center of it all, of course, is Sophie Thatcher, who absolutely makes this film what it is. I mentioned in my Letterboxd reaction that the movie wouldn't be half as good without her, and I stand by that opinion. She is definitely doing the heavy lifting here, and her character arc of realizing the kind of relationship she's in, confronting what she's dealing with, and figuring out the path she wants to follow from there is something you enjoy watching her process and wrestle with. She has a very expressive face. She is very likable from the first moment you see her on screen, and as you slowly learn what she learns, you really root for her in a way that you might not have if this movie went for a slightly different angle and tone. Once again, being vague here, but if you know, you know. Also, shout out to Lucas Gage. He was excellent as well. His character is on his own journey here, and he also gets to have a lot of fun with his character, showing some range. The movie is very satisfying visually with its warm and vibrant color palette and an aesthetic that is reminiscent of a wholesome rom-com or even something bordering a modern-day fairy tale, except for when we are reminded that this is a horror comedy and suddenly there's gore and violence. And yes, the movie is funny. It's not that funny. I wasn't blown away by the comedy, but I would definitely describe it as a dark comedy horror. I guess more of a violent thriller than actual horror, but the horror genre is so flexible that I'm not really interested in debating those genre lines. Here's the thing, I can see why people are loving this movie. If you just want something light and entertaining, but also a bit topical and unafraid to get a little dark and a little weird, Companion is a great time. If you saw the trailer or the teaser and you thought, this looks like fun, this looks like my kind of movie, you're probably going to enjoy it. I personally had a good enough time with it, but I just didn't love it beyond saying, that was good. One thing I can talk about without spoilers is that I found the movie incredibly predictable, and not in a way that makes you feel satisfied for calling the twist early, but rather I immediately knew what kind of movie this was and what the twists were going to be. And I say this even though I did not watch the spoilery trailer before watching the movie. Part of it is that I watch a lot of horror and a lot of the other genre that this is, but even if we're just looking at its foreshadowing tactics and hints, the movie makes things pretty obvious. On top of that, it deals with a lot of low-hanging fruit when it comes to tropes and comedy, when it comes to the types of characters it features and how they behave, what their motivations are, which is fine. Not every movie is supposed to be nuanced and complex, and this one isn't trying to change your life. But as a viewer, I have my own preferences, and for me, this was a one-time watch that I enjoyed but just didn't love, mainly because I've seen other movies do these themes a lot better. It always disappoints me when a movie has an interesting concept but doesn't really want to actually explore it. All right, I gotta talk about mild spoilers and the key element of this movie, so if you still haven't seen it and you don't want to know, skip to the next part of the video. All right? Okay, so Companion is also a sci-fi film, and Iris is an AI girlfriend. And if you're curious, yes, it is revealed pretty early in the movie, so it's not as big of a spoiler as you might think. This obviously gives the toxic relationship at the center of the story a boost and really zeroes in on the power dynamics and expectations in such a relationship and in relationships in general. What is her role? How is she treated? Are her feelings and desires secondary? Does she have her own feelings and desires? There's also an emphasis on controlling her intelligence and how Josh's friends see her. See, to me, when an interesting idea like that is presented, I immediately want more development, because this opens a whole new can of worms, especially when AI is so relevant to our conversations today. But the movie does the thing that always feels like a letdown to me. It has a good concept, but it takes the most basic route when it comes to developing it. The better film that immediately comes to mind here is Ex Machina. I think it's impossible to watch this and not think about Ex Machina. And that's a film with a lot more to say on the subject. You can also look at something like Her, which is another brilliant movie that explores a romantic relationship with AI. If we're talking about exploration of identity and humanity in AI, which this movie barely touches on, and yet definitely revolves around, come on, Blade Runner and Blade Runner 2049 exist. And those are just the ones that instantly come to mind. This topic has been done so many times and a lot better. Companion chooses the route of Megan and Ready or Not, but also leans a lot less into the horror elements. On a different note, I found the opening voiceover of the film to be a bizarre choice, because it literally tells you how the movie is going to end right then and there. Why? The suspense of whether or not Iris is going to break free from her programming is completely gone. And considering how obvious the twists of this movie are, it just means that not only is the journey predictable, but also I knew the destination. So in the end, here's where I am with Companion. It's good, but it's not great. It's a dark comedy, but it's not really that funny. It's a horror thriller, but it's not really that scary. It's well paced and it has a lot of twists, but it's pretty predictable. It's an aesthetically pleasing movie with a good premise, a cool lead character, and a solid cast. Sophie Thatcher in particular is instantly adorable, but this really is what the movie is trying to write it out on. It's not interested in going anywhere meaningful or offering something new, and instead just wants to keep things light and enjoyable. And it does find small ways to play with its concept, but for a movie that's seemingly commenting on toxic relationships, power dynamics, and bringing in a twist that has a lot of potential, Companion remains very surface level. Look, I also love vibrant colors and cool aesthetics, and like I said earlier, I did enjoy this movie for what it was, but ultimately, it's just not something that's going to stay with me. It's not a movie I'm going to be thinking about for much longer, and that's disappointing.